Jeff Slauson here from 19 News Now at the 19 News Digital Desk. This is something that we've been covering for the past couple of weeks here. The unfortunate rise in overdose cases from a variety of different drugs here in the state of Ohio. And now a new drug that is technically supposed to be used for vet services and for sedating different animals has become very deadly for people. Xylazine is the name. And unfortunately, in the state of Ohio, we had to move that up to a Schedule III drug, which essentially allows for quicker action to prevent overdoses, hopefully, from happening as a result of it, and to make sure that a drug like that is known as being a problem. We spoke earlier today with the Ohio Narcotics Intelligence Center about this, and about what the state needs to do to help stop the spread of this, and here's what they had to say. Start off here. We have been seeing some of these trends, at least over the past couple of weeks, spoken to groups in the Adams Board here in Cuyahoga County, but Xylazine, something that we didn't necessarily see coming for a lot of it, at least for the numbers that we've seen here. Clearly it's become a big enough deal to where the state has taken notice. If you can, just kind of explain to people what exactly this is and why this is becoming such a problem.
Absolutely. So xylazine is a veterinary sedative and analgesic. And it's important to note that xylazine is not an opioid. The significance of that is that if xylazine alone induces an overdose, something like naloxone, which is used to reverse the overdose of an opioid, so like your fentanyl, your heroin, something like that, it won't be effective. And most times, and it's important to note this, most times when we see xylazine, we're seeing it in a mixture that does contain an opioid. And it's for that reason that we want to urge people to administer naloxone, even though it may be less effective, anytime they suspect there might be an overdose. And they may have to administer it more than once because naloxone may be less effective if there's an opioid stronger than fentanyl, or if there's xylazine included in that drug mixture. And nobody knows what might be in that drug mixture either. You can't tell when you have a drug in front of you. If you have a pill, powder, or liquid in front of you, you can't tell what might be in that mixture. And the illicit drug supply in the United States is growing increasingly more dangerous.
We had a situation where we get the alert that the governor has done an emergency scheduling for Xylazine as a Schedule III drug. A lot of words there, a lot of terms there that many people may not totally understand, but why is that needed? Why is it needed to do a schedule or an emergency schedule of a drug when it poses such a risk as this one is?
Mm-hmm. So I'll take a step back and kind of explain what it means to be a Schedule III. Controlled substances, so these are substances that not just anybody can possess, are categorized based off 5 different schedules. One is being the most regulated and 5 being the least regulated. And in order to decide which of those categories to put it in, you have to look at a couple of factors. And those include the potential for abuse and whether there's a medical acceptance or medical use that's available. And in the case of xylazine, we know that there is legitimate use in veterinary medicine. And so for that reason, it was put in a lower category in Schedule III so that it can maintain its access, its necessary access for veterinary purposes. But at the same time, because we did start to see an increase in xylazine use in Ohio, we can more easily prosecute now by putting it into the drug schedules, drug traffickers who may have xylazine.
Fentanyl has been something that has become really, or at least people have become really aware of it and understanding that it is a massive problem here. But some of these new opioids that are starting to be found out or discovered or being used are way more potent than what is considered to be such a dangerous and fearful part of that. I mean, how difficult is it, at least from your perspective here, when we have these newer drugs or newer opioids coming on that are really more potent than what we've seen with fentanyl? How difficult can it be to combat that? How difficult can it be to figure out exactly what these are, where these are, and how to stop it?
It's really difficult, but we're taking steps here in Ohio to be able to tackle those issues earlier than we ever have before, and that's being done largely as a consequence of an executive order that Governor DeWine signed back in 2019 to create the Ohio Narcotics Intelligence Center, and he created that to help exactly what you're talking about, to help stop this evolving landscape of illicit drugs in Ohio. Up until that point, there was no information sharing network dedicated exclusively to drugs. And so now we have started to set up some infrastructure here through the ONIC, where we're proactively engaging criminal justice agencies, we're proactively engaging Ohio crime labs so that they can share those trends as they see them. And then we can take the information that they're sharing with us, we can analyze it and triage it for an emergency scheduling action, for instance, like we did with Xylazine.
As for Xylazine, not just strictly Xylazine itself, but maybe mixing it, things like that, is that something that's being seen as well, Xylazine with other drugs, other opioids being used?
Absolutely. We're seeing Xylazine in mixtures with nitazines, we're seeing it in mixtures with fentanyl. But part of the challenge that we see with emerging drugs, especially emerging drugs that are not controlled, is that the prevalence is difficult to ascertain. It's hard to understand that prevalence because until something's controlled, they're not reported by crime labs, for instance. They might not be reported as much by a toxicology lab. So this is really the first step for us to start to get our arms around just how prevalent it is. We know based off of evidence that we're seeing, indications that we're seeing that there's an uptick. And we know that crime labs have estimated that between 25 to 30% of fentanyl mixtures submitted to them by local law enforcement contain xylazine, but these are all estimates.
When we consider where we are right now, I know it's very early in the year still, and where we were in 2022, what are the numbers saying about what we should be expecting both with overdoses and the increased influence of newer drugs for this year and potentially into next year?
Sure. The drug landscape is rapidly evolving, and it's becoming more dangerous. It's hard to predict what that's going to look like, how quickly something may spread, if it may spread at all, the presence of it in an illicit drug market. So those are really nebulous numbers for us to be able to tackle. It's something we monitor. We talk regularly to the Ohio Department of Health, for instance, and other broad-ranging disciplines, even beyond public health. We try to communicate regularly on with education, with hospitals, with law enforcement, obviously, to try and keep our finger on the pulse there, and then also to share the information with them. And you're hard pressed to find any discipline that isn't touched by this drug epidemic.
So we have all this information currently available on our website at cleveland19.com. This is a massive problem that myself and Jim Nelson did stories on yesterday, and of course all of that information available, like I said, on our website, cleveland19.com. Our news will be continuing at 10 o'clock on the CW and 11 o'clock over on CBS, where we will continue to follow the breaking news of the recent indictment of President Donald Trump. In addition to that, the other stories of the day. For now, I'm Jeff Slauson with 19 News. Have a great night. Much more to come on our digital platforms and online and on air very shortly.
19 News, now streaming on Samsung Smart TV. Search for